Day three of reading for 30 minutes every single day to one, improve my articulation, two, to just improve my readiness at answering interview questions, and yeah, three, this was just the most convenient thing to read to kill two birds in one stone because I could read a book, but I don't have any particular books in mind, to be honest. Like, there are a couple, to be honest. Like, I've heard of people reading stuff like Atomic Habits. There's some other books as well, but I'm just going to read this just because it's probably more likely to help me out. So let's go. So this is run 24. So the 24th time that I've put this prompt into ChatGPT to kind of generate model answers or model. It can't really go into that much detail without being me, but it just gives me ideas on how to structure the answers for each question. So yeah, we're just gonna go and I'm gonna get into it. Let me just get some water. Okay, question one. We've covered your experience. Who are you when think we've covered your experience? Oh, one thing I'm gonna do as well, like I'm trying to particularly focus on making sure I'm articulating every single part of the word and not like slurring words because I need to get in the habit. That's why I picked such like a pretty lengthy time. So then when I'm forcing that for 30 minutes, it kind of just becomes a good habit. So yeah. We've covered your experience. Who are you when things are genuinely hard? When things are genuinely hard, I slow down rather than speed up. I focus on what's controllable, what matters most, and what responsibility I actually carry. In demanding environments, when healthcare placements, work, or sport, right? In demanding environments, whether healthcare placements, work, or sport, I've learned that panic and urgency usually make situations worse. I stay composed, act within my limits, communicate early, and accept that not everything will be perfect. That approach has helped me handle pressure without compromising judgment. Question two. Tell me about a time you had a real impact without recognition. During a placement, there were periods where the team was under strain and small errors could easily have compounded. I focused on accuracy, preparation, and anticipating needs rather than visibility. Nothing dramatic happened, which was the success. The workflow stayed stable and risks were managed. The workflow stayed stable and risks were minimized. That experience reinforced for me that impact isn't always visible. Sometimes it's about preventing problems rather than creating standout moments. Question three. What's the hardest responsibility you've taken on so far? The hardest responsibility has been managing myself under pressure. In competitive and professional environments, I've had to learn how to regulate emotion, maintain standards, and keep perspective when outcomes didn't go my way. That internal responsibility, staying disciplined, reflective, and constructive, has been harder than any single task, but it's also been the most valuable. Question four. Tell me about a time you nearly got something wrong. There was a situation during a placement where I initially felt confident about how to proceed, but something didn't sit right. Instead of pushing ahead, I paused, checked. Instead of pushing ahead, I paused, checked my understanding with a supervisor, and it turned out, instead of pushing ahead, I paused, checked my understanding with a supervisor. It turned out I had overlooked an important detail. That moment reinforced a habit I rely on now. If something feels slightly off, I stop and reassess. That pause has probably prevented more mistakes than any technical skill. Question 5. What will you struggle with in your first 6 months? I'll likely struggle most with the urge to be immediate. I'll likely struggle most with the urge to be immediately useful. I care about contributing, but I've learned that in high responsibility environments, rushing value can create risk. I need to keep balancing patience with initiative, learning properly while still engaging fully. I'm aware of that tension, and that awareness helps me manage it deliberately. Let me get some more water. Question 6. Why should we trust you with responsibility? Because I don't treat responsibility lightly. Across different environments, I've shown that I respect boundaries, escalate when needed, and prioritize safety and standards over ego. I don't confuse confidence with competence. If I'm trusted with responsibility, I'll act carefully, communicate clearly, and take ownership of outcomes, including when things don't go perfectly. Question 7. If we didn't choose you, what would we miss? You'd miss someone who brings stability as well as capability. I may not be the loudest presence, but I'm consistent, reflective, and dependable under pressure. I focus on making situations better rather than louder. Over time, that steadiness compounds into trust, and that's what I believe I bring. Question 8. What would success in this role look like after 1 year? Success would mean that I'm trusted, that, that people know I understand the standards, act responsibly, and can be relied on when things aren't straightforward. If I've learned deeply, contributed consistently, and reduced friction rather than created it, I'd consider that. If I've learned deeply, contributed consistently, and reduced friction rather than created it, I'd consider what it is. If I've learned deeply, contributed consistently, and reduced friction rather than created it, I'd consider that a strong first year. Everything else builds from that. Okay, that's the end of round 23. Let's move on to round 24, I mean. Let's move on to round 25. So the next run of interview question is about decision making for personal. So the next run is about decision making, personal standards, and quiet leadership in everyday moments. Not crisis mode, not crisis mode, not final round drama. These are the questions that reveal whether someone will be solid and trustworthy day after day. Okay, so question 1. Tell me about yourself. I see myself as someone who is shaped by everyday responsibility rather than standout moments across work placement, across work placements, leadership roles, and sports. I've learned that most impact comes from how consistently you show up, how you communicate, how you handle pressure, and how seriously you take small decisions. I'm reflective by nature, disciplined in how I improve, and comfortable learning in environments where expectations are high. That's the foundation of how I work. Question two. Tell me about a time you made a decision others didn't notice. During a busy placement, there were moments where tasks could be rushed to keep pace. I made a conscious decision to slow down slightly, double check details, and prioritize accuracy, even though it wasn't visible or praised. The result was that nothing went wrong, and that was success. The result was that nothing went wrong, and that was the success. That experience reinforced for me that good judgment often looks invisible, but is what keeps systems working properly. Question three. Describe a time you had to adjust your communication style. I had to do this during service roles where different colleagues responded very differently under pressure. With some people, being direct worked well. With others, it increased tension. I adjusted by becoming more aware of tone, timing, and how messages landed rather than just what I was saying. That adjustment improved teamwork and taught me that effective communication is situational, not fixed. Question four. Tell me about a time you had to keep standards high when others were tired. This came up in a team sport environment during a demanding training period. As fatigue set in, effort and focus dropped. Rather than pushing verbally, I maintained intensity myself and encouraged consistency through behavior. That steadiness helped prevent standards from slipping and reminded me that that steadiness helped prevent standards from slipping and reminded me that leadership often shows most when energy is low, not when motivation is high. Question five. What's a weakness you've only recognized recently? I've recently recognized that I can be overly self-critical after small mistakes. While reflection is useful, I noticed that dwelling too long didn't improve performance. I've been working on extracting the lesson and then moving forward more quickly. That balance has helped me stay both accountable and resilient. Question six. What motivates you on an ordinary day? On ordinary days, I'm motivated by maintaining my own standards. I care about doing things properly, even when there's no spotlight or pressure. That consistency gives me confidence that I'll perform when things do become demanding. It's a quiet form of motivation. It's a quiet form of motivation, but it's reliable. Question seven. Tell me about a time you had to support a team without taking over. In a group setting where one person was underperforming, I resisted the urge to compensate by doing more myself. Instead, I supported them through encouragement and clarity, while still holding down my role to a high standard. Instead, I supported them through encouragement and clarity, while still holding my own role to a high standard. That approach preserved that approach preserved team balance and reinforced that support doesn't mean control. Question 8. What do you think you're still developing? I'm still developing my ability to balance confidence with patience. I'm comfortable taking responsibility, but I'm also learning to respect the learning curve in new environments. Holding that balance deliberately is something I'm continuing to work on. I see that as a strength in developing. I see that as a strength in development rather than a flaw. Okay, that's run 25. Now it's time for run 26. So this next run is about first day credibility, authority without seniority, and how you handle mistakes in real time. Exactly what interviewers probe when they are picturing you actually starting the role. So question one, tell me about yourself. I see myself as someone who earns trust through how I operate day to day. Across work, healthcare placements, leadership roles, and sport, I've learned that credibility comes from consistency rather than confidence. I focus on understanding expectations, acting responsibly, and improving deliberately. That approach helps me rec- that approach helps me integrate quickly into new environments and contribute in a way that's reliable rather than disruptive. Question two. Imagine it's your first week here. How do you approach it? Imagine it's your first week here. How do you approach it? How do you approach it? Yeah, I definitely need to work on my articulation because I feel like a lot of words I struggle to like articulate properly. In my first week, my priority would be understanding standards before trying. In my first week, my priority would be understanding standards before trying to add value. From experience in placements and work environments, I've learned that listening carefully, observing how decisions are made, and asking the right questions early prevents mistakes later. Once I understand expectations, I contribute proactively within my scope. That balance helps me build trust quickly without overstepping. Question three. Tell me about a time you made a mistake and had to address it immediately. During a service role, I realized mid-task that I mi- during a service role, I realized mid-task that I'd misunderstood part of a process. Rather than pushing through and hoping it wouldn't matter, I stopped, clarified the issue with a colleague, and corrected it. What is Rather than pushing through and hoping it wouldn't matter, I stopped, clarified the issue with a colleague, and corrected it straight away. It was uncomfortable, but it prevented a larger problem. That experience reinforced that addressing mistakes early is always less costly. That experience reinforced that addressing mistakes early is always less That experience reinforced that addressing mistakes early is always less costly than hiding them. Question Question 4. How do you influence people when you don't have authority? Let me get some water. Question 4. How do you influence people when you don't have authority? I influence through consistency. I influence through consistency and behavior rather than direction. In team sport and work settings, I've found that staying in team sport and work settings, I've found that staying calm, maintaining standards, and supporting others quietly often shifts group behavior more effectively than instructions. When people see reliability over time, influence tends to follow naturally. Question 5. Tell me about a time you had to manage uncertainty on the spot. This happened during a placement when instructions weren't immediately available and decisions still had to be made. I focused on what I knew for certain: safety, my limits, and clear communication. I acted conservatively and escalated where appropriate. That approach allowed progress without unnecessary risk and reinforced that approach allowed progress without unnecessary risk and reinforced my ability to function responsibly in ambiguity. Question 6. What's a strength that would show up quickly if we hired you? One strength that would show up quickly is reliability. I'm consistent in preparation, communication, and follow through. That makes me someone others can depend on early, even before I'm fully experienced. Over time, that reliability creates space for deeper contribution. Question 7. What's a weakness that might show up early? Early on, I may take time to fully calibrate before speaking confidently. I prefer understanding context rather than guessing. I'm aware of that tendency and work to balance it by asking questions early while still being thoughtful. That adjustment period shortens quickly once expectations are clear. Question 8. What tells you you're doing a good job? I know I'm doing a good job when people trust me with responsibility, whether that's being relied on under pressure or included more actively in decisions. Trust is the signal I value most. It tells me when I'm contributing in a way that's genuinely useful, not just visible. Okay, that's run 26 over. Next up is run 27. So run 27 focuses on high stakes judgment, conflict with conflict with authority. I feel like you actually get sore throat when you're reading for so long. Conflict with authority and what to do when some. The next run focuses on high stakes judgment, conflict with authority, and what to do when something genuinely goes wrong. The questions interviewers ask when they're assessing risk, not potential. These answers show accountability without panic. Again, tell me about yourself. I'm someone who takes responsibility seriously. I'm someone who takes responsibility seriously, especially when outcomes affect other people. Across healthcare placements, work environments, leadership roles, and sport, I've learned that composure and judgment matter more than quick reactions. I'm deliberate in how I assess situations, communicate clearly, and reflect on outcomes. That mindset has shaped how I operate under pressure and how I continue to improve. Question 2. Imagine you've made a serious mistake. What do you do? My first step would be to stabilize the situation rather than defend myself. From experience in healthcare and professional settings, I've learned that acknowledging the issue early, understanding the impact, and escalating appropriately prevents further harm. I'd be transparent about what's happened, focus on correcting it, and reflect on how to prevent it happening again. I see mistakes as something to manage responsibly, not hide. Question 3. Tell me about a time you disagreed with someone senior to you. This happened during a placement when I was unsure about a routine approach being used. Instead of challenging it directly, I first made sure I understood the reasoning. I then raised my concern as a question, focusing on safety rather than opinion. Even though the decision didn't change, The discussion was constructive. That experience taught me how to navigate hierarchy while still acting responsibly. Question 4. How do you handle conflict when you can't avoid it? I focus on clarity and timing rather than emotion. In team environments, I found that conflict escalates when people feel unheard. I try to understand perspectives first, then address the issue calmly and directly. That approach doesn't eliminate conflict, but that approach doesn't eliminate conflict, but it keeps it productive and prevents it from becoming personal. Question 5. Tell me about a time pressure tempted you to cut corners. During a busy placement, workload pressure made it tempting to move faster than I was comfortable with. I chose to slow down slightly and double check key details. Even though it added short-term friction, the long the outcome was that nothing went wrong. The outcome was that nothing went wrong, which mattered more than speed. That moment reinforced for me that pressure is when standards matter most. Question 6. What's a risk you actively manage in yourself? A risk I manage is being overly self-reliant. In demanding environments, I sometimes default to handling things independently. I've learned that communicating earlier and involving others improves outcomes and reduces unnecessary strain. Being aware of that tendency helps me to work effectively. Being aware of that tendency helps me work more effectively within teams. Question 7. What would your manager need to know to work well with you? They'd need to know that I value clarity and standards. I perform best when expectations are clear and feedback is honest. I'm comfortable taking responsibility and I respond well to guidance. I'm comfortable taking responsibility and I respond well to guidance, especially early on. If communication is open, I integrate quickly and contribute reliably. Question 8. What's something you'd never compromise on at work? I wouldn't compromise on honesty about my limits. If I'm unsure or something is outside my scope, I'd rather pause and escalate rather than if I'm unsure or something is outside my scope, I'd rather pause and escalate than pretend confidence. That principle has guided me across healthcare, work, and team environments. It's how I protect outcomes and maintain trust. Okay, let's go for run 28 now. This is probably going to be the final one. So this run is crisis mode. Situations where things unravel, pressure spikes, and there's no clean solution. Interviewers use these to see whether you stabilize chaos or become part of it. These answers show containment, judgment, and leadership under stress. All scenarios are new within this run. Okay, cool. Question 1. Tell me about yourself. I'm someone who becomes more deliberate when things start going wrong. Across healthcare placements, work environments, leadership roles, and sports, I've learned that pressure is where habits show. I slow situations down, prioritize what actually matters, and focus on preventing problems from escalating. That approach helps me stay useful. Oh, it is. That approach helps me stay useful when conditions are unpredictable. rather than needing everything to be controlled. Question 2. Tell me about a time everything didn't go to plan. One example was during a service role when unexpected issues compounded during a busy period. Rather than trying to fix everything at once, I focused on stabilizing the basics, clear communication, prioritizing immediate needs, and supporting colleagues who were stretched. Once things were steady, we worked through the remaining issues. That experience taught me that in crisis moments, containment comes before optimization. Question 3. What do you do when multiple problems demand attention at once? I triage rather than react. In high pressure environments, I've learned to identify what carries the most risk if left unattended. I address that first, communicate clearly about what's being deferred, and reassess continuously. That structured approach prevents overwhelm and helps teams move forward methodically instead of emotionally. Question 4. Tell me about a time you had to protect others under pressure. This came up during a healthcare placement when workload pressure began affecting focus. I made a conscious effort to slow interactions slightly, double check key details, and support teammates who were close to rushing. It wasn't about heroics, just about keeping standards intact. That moment reinforced that protecting others often means maintaining calm rather than taking charge loudly. Question 5. What's the first thing you don't do in a crisis? I don't rush to assign blame or prove competence. From experience, that usually escalates tension and distracts from experience, that usually escalates tension and distracts from solving the problem. I focus instead on the facts, next steps, and clear communication. That restraint helps keep situations productive rather than personal. Question 6. Tell me about a time pressure exposed a weakness. Under pressure, I've noticed a tendency to internalize responsibility rather than share it. In demanding situations, I initially tried to manage too much alone. Over time, I realized that communicating earlier and delegating appropriately improved outcomes and reduced risk. Recognizing that weakness helped me become more effective in team-based crises. Question 7. How do you regain control after a crisis? Once immediate issues are contained, I shift to reflection and learning. I review what happened, what signals were missed, and what could prevent recurrence. That process helps turn disruption into improvement rather than just relief that it's over. It's how I ensure the same crisis doesn't repeat itself. Question 8. Final question. Why should we trust you in high pressure situations? Because I don't confuse urgency with effectiveness. Across environments where mistakes matter, I've shown that I stay calm, prioritize well, and act within my limits while still being productive. In high pressure situations, I focus on making things better, not louder. Okay, that's it. Yeah, to be honest, if there's one thing I've learned through doing this is that just pausing can help to really ensure that I articulate the next few words very well, rather than trying to get it out quickly and then stumbling and then having to repeat the whole sentence. That's kind of why I like forcing myself to redo a whole sentence when I stumble because it forces me to make sure that I pause instead of rush through something. So yeah, I'm back again tomorrow.